My name is Jamie, and welcome to the ILIG, informal or meeting or virtual meeting, whatever you want to call it these days, Zoom meeting. I am ILIG's web editor, so do check out our website and keep it in your favorites and in your browser favorites. So I'm introducing today Arjun Sanyal. I've known Arjun for about 2 years, something like that, and Arjun works for the Central University of Himachal Pradesh. I hope I haven't made any pronunciation errors, which is practically in the western sort of Himalayas, a very beautiful, beautiful region. So I'd love to come and visit one time. So yeah, I'm going to have a look at that. But Arjun is the winner of the 2021, so last year's Alan Hopkinson Award to go to IFLA. Now, last year's IFLA, for those that you were there, not there, was an online event, and we paid for under that award for Arjun to go along. And I won't say too much more than that. Arjun's assistant librarian at the Central University. The acronym is CUHP, and you've got quite a lot more than 5 years. Have you got more than 5 years experience now, Arjun, in the library sector? But I see great things for you, Arjun, because your view is very global, and you're prepared to learn, and expand your horizons. So we'll be learning a lot from you today as well. So without further ado, Arjun's talk on his experiences at the IFLA WLIC last year. Okay, over to you, Arjun.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you, Jamie, for this gracious introduction. So it's always a very rather wonderful feeling for myself when I come to an IFLA, even be it a conference, a talk session, or anything of that sort. So basically, at today's informal talk session, I'm really delighted to develop on my experiences as an Alan Hopkinson Awardee in attending the IFLA World Library Information Congress 2021. Now, I have always been a very firm believer in the idea of continuing professional development, and so attending the IFLA World Library Information Congress was really a dream come true. And I was always fascinated by the idea of attending the World Library Information Congress, and I was never sure of how I would go about it. So it was just by a quirk of fate that, or you may call serendipitously, that I came across this information on the website of CILIP, and I instantly thought of applying for it, and I just made it. So one thing I would like to clarify at the outset, that attending the IFLA event was not just your ordinary CPD endeavor. I mean, it is basically a wonderful interactive platform where you get to meet librarian colleagues from across the globe, and also faculty members from various iSchools globally. And by way of those interactions which you have with people across the globe, it has, personally speaking, helped me in reshaping my perspectives, in that it has helped me to think the idea of libraries as not some techno-deterministic entities, but rather I think that libraries are more and more open-ended social entities that sort of help us in reimagining our futures. So I call it libraries with a soul. So it's the user who is at the center of the library, and it's not the tech that's determining the future. So basically, in other words, I would think that attending the IFLA World Library Congress actually had made me realize that in this current social milieu, when we all talk about bias-ridden algorithms and how the tech companies are has reached every nook and cranny of your lives, I think the libraries as social infrastructures, they stand out like beacons, in that they help you to think of technology as a human-centered concept, which is underpinned by the idea of empathy and empowerment. So I believe that as a librarian, it's not just the informational agenda that you are sort of there to execute, or you are there to carry it out, but rather as a librarian, you have a social calling. So, and this fact that you need to make a difference socially has become all the more evident, particularly in the aftermath of this pandemic. So basically, when I appeared at the IFLA World Library Information Congress last year, the very first thing that appealed to me was the theme of the IFLA. It's let's work together. And I would say that this theme appealed to me because it was basically rooted in the idea of social justice, which actually appeals to me very much as a librarian. because I believe that libraries and librarians need to work together at this critical juncture globally and bring about grassroots social change. And by bringing about grassroots social change, that you can set in motion a new sort of empowering social narratives. So to that end, the conference was basically, it was a 3-day affair, and the conference was basically focused on 5 broad themes. The first was the libraries innovate. Secondly was libraries include. Thirdly was libraries sustain. Fourth was libraries inspire. And the fifth one was libraries enable. Now, I will not go into the broader technicalities of each of these themes, but rather I will touch upon the 3 main ideas that appeal to me from this whole Congress, which actually embraces all these 5 concepts and within the broader umbrella of social justice. So first is the thing that, for the first idea that appealed to me was that libraries are simply not just physical spaces. Now, we all know that in this age of fast-changing IT innovations and everything, I mean, we need to think of library beyond the physical space. Now, the general idea is that we need to think of it as a virtual space, but I would say that it's much more than a virtual space. The virtual realm is always there, but we need to think of this as something beyond that. So if anybody has gone through my article, for those who have gone through my focus article, you might recall that I've used the term intellectual spaces. Now, when we talk about the fact that libraries are something beyond the physical space, we think of MyRight terms like the maker space, the third space, and so on. Now, personally speaking, I would go for the idea of a third space, because for me, the idea of a third space is basically underpinned by the notion of what I call pursue your passions as creatively as possible. So libraries, to my mind, in this sense, are actually spaces that allow you to let loose your creative selves. In fact, I was so taken by a presentation from a doctoral candidate at the UCLA School that I am thinking of embarking on some structural changes within a cyber lab come open space within my library, and I would like to transform it into something called the Creative Commons. So it's by laying your heads together that you can come to some creative solutions. Now, in this regard, one of the important factors that when you think of tech innovations and the library as a space and thinking of libraries from a systems viewpoint, one of the important things is that we need to ensure the holistic development of a digitally literate citizen, and also we must think of creating a digitally discerning citizen. Now, in this regard, when I say a digitally discerning citizenry, I would lay equal emphasis on both digital discerning as well as digital literate, because what is important is that the populace or the people at large should learn not only how to manage misinformation or not to fall within the lure of the clickbait, or how to steer clear of the lure of the clickbait, but also they must also understand that we must never be at the mercy of these deceptive algorithms. Now, I believe some of you must have heard about the book called Algorithms of Oppression by Safia Noble. She is a faculty at the UCLA School. And so just taking a leaf out of Safia's book, I just prefer to call it Algorithms of Deception. I mean, it's the deception that causes the oppression, actually. So basically, it's about developing a critical mindset of how you need to counter this realm of virtual illusions in the form of fake news, misinformation, and so on. But also at the same time, you need to develop a mindset which will help you to shake off, this fatalistic notion of a techno-deterministic human society. Now, I know that when I speak of the idea of a critical mindset of being digitally discerning as well as being digitally literate at the same time, I know that it's easier said than done, because the core concept that underpins all these ideas is the idea of critical thinking. Now, we are all aware, and I mean, we know very well, it's a truism that critical thinking has its fair share of positives as well as criticisms, because too much of critical thinking can lead you to nowhere, particularly when we are living in the age of the attention economy. But then I believe this is a challenge that libraries need to tackle by way of innovations. Secondly, the idea that appealed to me was the libraries and the green agenda, or how libraries can help in moving towards sustainable futures. Now, we all know that ever since the green parties have come and ever since the green agenda has become a big issue in the wake of the global warming, so the core concept is that we need to give back to nature as much as we take from it. And it is a truism that as human beings, our whole social existence is inextricably intertwined with nature. In fact, in the opening session of the IFLA on the 17th of August, I recall IFLA President Christine McKenzie pointing out that since it is now more imperative than ever before to give back to Mother Earth, so libraries need to align their mission with the green agenda. In fact, I was very taken by concepts like the green information literacy and embarking on citizen science initiatives that focused on the green agenda. And I think that in the days to come, libraries of all sorts, be it public libraries, be it special libraries, be it research libraries, be it scientific libraries, be it academic libraries, they need to think very consciously in terms of the green agenda and how they can frame a roadmap in that regard. Finally, the idea that appealed to me most powerfully and was the potent and the cardinal fact is of librarians being empathetic and aggressive. And I believe that this is something that that should figure most prominently among the agenda of libraries globally. Now, this might seem a bit unusual because one might wonder how one can be empathetic and one can be aggressive at the same time. Now, at the very beginning, if I may recall a few minutes back, I just said that being empathetic means having libraries with a soul. So basically, the patron is the focus of what we do. And when we speak of libraries as social infrastructures, even academic libraries also. So the main issue is like creating, sort of a social experience. It's not just an information, or I would prefer to call it a socio-informational experience, unique socio-informational experience for the user or the patron. Simultaneously, we know that if we need to bring about changes in providing a unique socio-informational experience, we need to get the message across out to the policymakers. And in that involves, aggressively marketing your message. So the thing is that we must not view the realms of public policymakers as, secluded ivory towers meant for the select few. But we must always remember that it is only by way of a proactive and aggressive engagement with policymakers that librarians can bring out positive social change. So what transpires basically right now is that, and you might obviously understand that it is an uphill task, but by no means a difficult one. In fact, we know that in these challenging times, particularly the social disruptions that have occurred in the wake of the pandemic, there is a greater need among librarians to work not only in concert with one another globally, but also with policymakers, with academicians, and with the civil society at large. In fact, in that regard, I believe that the World Library Congress of the IFLA is basically an awesome opportunity for library professionals, not only to network with other professionals across the globe, but also to express the views and lay heads together for thinking out a roadmap for the coming days. In fact, personally speaking, I would urge all the IFLA, or I would urge all the CILIP members, particularly the early career professionals, to try their hand for this award, because it is not simply an accolade that stands by you in good stead professionally, but it also emboldens you to be the change that you want to see or you want to bring about. So making a difference is not just an individual endeavor, but it only happens when you're in the midst of some wonderful people. So the final message, or the final last analysis, I would tell everybody that just get out there, try your hand for it, get involved in IFLA, and bring about the change that you want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun. That was great. Lots of food for thought. There's many sort of doctoral theses in there as well. I was thinking. But before I witter on, we're going to turn it over to questions, I suppose. We've got quite a bit of time. We've got until 2 o'clock, but I'm going to stay until then by no means. And we'll go to questions now. If anyone's got a question, you put your hand up and then unmute your mic. I noticed that Aidan's got one already. He was the first. So Aidan, do you want to say something?
Yes, it's simply this. In view of what you were saying about critical thinking, etc., do you have a view of Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter?
So you've put me in a little bit of a spot over that, actually. So I don't know. I mean, that that actually sort of, it's too early to comment on that because the acquisition has just been made, and I think that in the days to come, we might see what happens with the bots and the misinformation and everything. But obviously, I just came across some article in the conversation where it says about digital town squares. So I don't know, I'll just share that article with Jamie sometime later. It's about what people make of billionaires taking over tech companies. So yeah, so I think, it's a little bit of wait and watch for everyone. Say for a year or two how it pans out. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aidan. Anybody else like to put their hands up to ask a question? Leslie's got a hand up, so we'll go straight to Leslie.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you, Arjun, for a really interesting talk. You ended by saying, be the change you want to see.
Yep.
So I wondered if you could say a bit more about the influence that attending the Congress had on your daily work, how you managed to share the lessons with colleagues, and whether it led to any practical changes. Thank you.
So basically, while I was attending this Congress, we were in the midst of the pandemic, although it was by the time the pandemic has sort of, petered out a little bit. So one of the things which I understood from this thing was that you need to, rethink the ways in which you go about the traditional library activities. So one of the main things which I started doing it after coming here is, sort of rethinking the pedagogical techniques when you hold the information literacy sessions, and you try to, sort of make it a little more empathetic. Sort of you try to make, you sort of create how you create an inclusive pedagogical, that is still in the experimental stage, but we try to make it more enjoyable. We try to see that no child is left out. So where I run my library, where I have my library actually, so we have students from various socioeconomic backgrounds, and most of them are victims of what we call digital poverty. So even if they are using the smartphone, they're using it unwittingly. So they don't know that what exactly how they go about using the information for the academic needs. So I try to, there is a faculty and a library engagement team. So we try to make the lessons more sort of, inclusive, and we try to create a sort of a learning atmosphere within the library. Where, students feel emboldened to come back to the library. For them, it's not about coming to university, it's coming to the library where they can enjoy, where they can sit down. And when you stay at home for the continuous 2-3 months, it gives you a sort of a negative, it has a negative mental effect on you. So when we try to bring back the students to the university, not all of them are very keen on coming back to the university, but we need to ensure that the library is one of the first welcoming spaces where they feel that they can step inside, and they're stepping inside just to study. It's not a disciplinarian, it's not a space to discipline them, but it's a space to welcome them back, and it's a space to make learning more enjoyable.
Thank you for that, Arjun, as always. Any more questions from anybody? I'm sure John Dolan's got a question, or maybe Sarah or Phil. Someone's got a question. If not, I'll start asking the questions.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Great, John. Welcome.
Yeah, sorry, because I've had trouble with my Wi-Fi, so I'm on the phone. I don't know. I've not used the phone for Zoom before. I was interested in if Arjun could just take an overview of the development of public libraries in India. I know it's state, if you like, it's developed by state. Some years ago, the Knowledge and Information Commission produced a report recommending modernization of libraries in India. I've been involved with one of the states in some strategic thinking about the direction they could go in. And I wondered if that general movement was taking place, recognizing many of the things that Arjun's been speaking of, and if you like, building not just libraries as physical spaces, but in the digital era, whether they're moving along. Is there a consistent move across India, or is it more in some places than others? What's the general picture? picture?
Well, actually, I mean, libraries as a whole, they don't have a clear-cut policy regarding libraries. I mean, in case of the public libraries, particularly so, I mean, in the southern Indian states, particularly Kerala and Tamil Nadu, I mean, they have a very well-established network of public libraries, and they do have sort of very good initiatives like some initiatives to counter fake news. And I think somewhere in Kerala they had a initiative where they partnered with local schools to teach children on how they can go about practicing critical thinking and click restraint and all sorts of things. But as far as academic libraries are concerned, particularly university libraries, I mean, we don't have any policy as such, but one of the things which has come out of the recent new education policy of the government of India is that they have sort of given some emphasis on developing new sorts of infrastructure facilities like research data management and going about sort of rethinking physical spaces in terms of a user experience perspective. So these are one of the three things that have come out of the policy. But I think currently libraries across India are working on how we can go about research data management, because we have huge loads and loads of research data piling up every now and then. So this is a pressing need for institutions across India, that how they manage this huge mass of research data that comes out every month.
Okay, thank you. Anything to follow up on that, John? Or does that answer your question?
Perhaps just, I mean, I appreciate the emphasis on the digital, and in fact, I don't really accept a difference between the digital and the print or the physical. It's a spectrum of different ways of communicating knowledge and information and ideas. So that's okay. Having said that, I wondered if there was a particular focus on children and young people at all.
Well, actually, libraries, I mean, particularly institutional libraries, like we have got some technology institutional libraries across India, so which have got residential colonies in them. So they particularly use issues like storytelling sessions for children, and like, for instance, my library particularly has a scheme of where they they maintain a book bank for children from local areas, from underprivileged backgrounds, and we have a particular day of the month where we invite school kids from the neighboring areas to come and visit the library. And if they have any questions, I mean, they can browse the internet and they can just check it out for them, and they can have a word with us. In fact, I'm sort of trying to go about make a space where we can invite kids, just to learn. I mean, just to draw pictures and interact with each other and do whatever they like. And I mean, it's a way of sort of, I mean, making them think in the way they want. I mean, sort of, where they can develop creatively on their own. I mean, it's not just that you are hooked to the school books, you are hooked to the coursework. It's thinking beyond the coursework, thinking beyond how you can sort of creatively create something like a picture. You can write a poetry, or you can code on your own. So these are the things which we are thinking of to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great, thank you. Just having a look at the chat here. Okay, we've got Gary. He's having trouble with his mic at the moment, but he wanted to ask you about open access landscape in India. How does this affect research outputs from universities in India? And he adds a bit more to that there is a plan. There is an argument that there's a plan. Plan S is a positive, but only for those who can afford to pay the article processing charge. So I wonder whether you could say a little bit. I know you work in the higher education environment, so yeah, would you like to say a little bit about the open access landscape in India, Arjun?
Yes, I mean, the open access landscape in India is, I mean, it's still in sort of a developmental stage. And as far as the Plan S is concerned, I mean, there is a sort of, it is still in a debating process. I mean, it's still debated among the policymakers. Like, some of them are of the opinion that Plan S has too much of a Eurocentric view of things. So maybe it might not be too suitable for the Indian sort of, Indian scenario. I mean, In India, one of the main problems is that there is so much of diversity among the states, and in terms of culture, food habits, and socially, that I mean, even in the education sectors also, you can't have a one clear-cut policy across all the institutions. But having said that, one of the pressing requirements for all universities is that you need to make open your research. So once your research is open, so one of the things which comes up is that how you make research, how you go about open research, or how you go about the open scholarship agenda. So plan as of now is not implemented in India, but there is a talk that maybe it should be modified within the Indian context, or maybe there can be a consortium of Asian universities who can take it up among themselves, and then they can come up with regional sort of roadmaps to guide their own open scholarship agenda.
Okay, thank you. Gary, does that answer your question? Would you have anything to follow up on that? Oh, good. Oh, he's already written something. Many thanks for your answer, Arjun. Very valuable to hear experience of open access outside of the European context. So, yeah, I find it was interesting that you said, these things have to be put into context by country. So that's food for thought just in itself. So, any more questions? Anybody attending?
Could I have a different question?
Of course,
please,
John.
Just about library information education in universities and the the undergraduate courses or personal development courses that are programs that people might go to qualify. What's the current state of play? Again, it's very difficult to think of something as being the whole of India in one go because it's such a huge country. But either in any of the states or in any of the areas of higher education, what's the state of play with people wanting to train and develop careers in library information services and science?
Well, actually, one of the major things which comes out actually is that we have a plethora of courses over there. I mean, some in the undergraduate level. I mean, they're less in the undergraduate level, and whatever courses are available in the undergraduate level, they are being, they're winding up. So majority of the courses begins at the postgraduate level. So one of the things is that one of the easiest things after you graduate is that you can be a university. You can get a job in the library. So most students upon graduation, they work as library trainee in most universities, and it's sort of an apprenticeship position where you get to gain a little experience, and then we have a sort of a competitive exam which actually qualifies you for both the library as well as for the academia. So it's the basic passport to further career. So once you have that exam and you qualify in the interview, so one of the basic things is that you can begin at the assistant librarian level, or you can begin at the library information assistant level, and then you proceed up. So if you aspire to the position of a librarian or a deputy librarian, so you need to go for a PhD. So one of the things is that they have got a certain guidelines by a sort of accrediting body of the Government of India. It's called the University Grants Commission. So they have a certain set of guidelines. So you have to fulfill those guidelines, which includes a certain number of years of experience, a certain number of publications and projects, and 2 or 3 professional accreditations, and then you move up to the next level. And in this way, you progress to the librarian level. Now, one of the major things in Indian library science educational scenario is that there is not much emphasis on the cutting edge concepts like archives or user experience or research data management and so on and so forth. In fact, currently I was in conversation with one library professional from the United States. She is currently in the Southern Indian University, and she is sort of holding classes on research data management and open scholarship. So one of the major problems with research data management is that scholars over here virtually have no idea of how to write data management plans and open access issues and so on. So basically, I believe that right now the time is right for librarians to engage with policymakers and push forward the idea of creating a data management framework, or say if we have something on the lines of a research excellence framework as in the UK. So these sort of things, because right now the research process needs to be more streamlined. And so I believe that librarians now have a critical role to play in that. Having said that, one of the major things for the coming generations is that we need to streamline the library education also. So this is one of the bigger challenges which lies ahead. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Arjun. Would you say it was accessible, or because of that series of competitive exams, would you say it's just really hard to get into?
Well, it is. Well, it's sort of hard for some. For some, it's easy, but yeah, that is the basic, threshold which you need to cross to qualify for. I mean, with that and the degree, you can sit for the interviews, and once you qualify the interviews, then you make it to the job.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask a question now because there's no other hands up at the moment. Are you going to this year's conference virtually or in any other way?
Actually, I would have loved to, but currently we have got some urgent official assignments coming up in the next 2 months. So basically, we cannot. I mean, it's not possible for me to be at the IFLA 2022.
Yeah, and we're also curious. I suppose I'm curious, but I think in ILIG we're curious because of the nature of the Alan Hopkinson Award. Was there much chance to network during the conference? Were there breakout rooms and virtual ways of networking, or do you think you might have been better to go there in person? What do you?
I think no. It was really an interesting experience being in the virtual rooms. I mean, I got to meet a lot of people, and I did get to interact with them via email later. And I think had I got the opportunity to be in Rotterdam, I mean, last year, it would have been a more interesting experience. But obviously, because of the constraints of the COVID, I mean, we couldn't make it. But it was nonetheless a really, really enriching learning experience for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Have you stayed in contact with anybody that you met there, for example?
Yeah, I'm still in contact with some of the people who I met there actually. Yes.
Oh, that's good. I suppose it's made easier with Twitter and following people on LinkedIn or whatever. It's a bit easier, isn't it? That's great then. That's all my questions. So unless anyone's got anything else, we'll let you carry on with your day. We've got Leslie just coming in now. So Leslie, go on.
Just one quick question. I was after some advice for us, if you don't mind. You said at the beginning of your talk that it was pure serendipity that you found the invitation to apply for the Alan Hopkinson Award. And obviously we would like our message to get to everybody who might take advantage of it. So what are we missing? We try and use social media, but is that the best way to reach people in India who might apply or elsewhere, or are there other networks that we could be using?
I think one of the things is that if you would like to share the the information with me, I would sort of post it in the Facebook pages of Indian Library Associations in India. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I would, in my own personal capacity, I would share that on Twitter. And I think LinkedIn would be a better opportunity. And I don't know if there are any other global. I mean, the mailing list would serve a big. It's a big opportunity for us all. So I think these are these are the options that right now come to my mind actually.
Okay.
So are you saying that LinkedIn is more used than say Twitter and Facebook for this sort of purpose?
I think people will notice on LinkedIn, but I think one of the most dynamic mediums in this regard would be Twitter. Twitter would be a more, would be a more dynamic area where people would instantly, once you tag them, actually, they would instantly get to notice and then through retweets time and again, the information spreads out as to many people as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, John, is it related to that question of reaching out, or is it a new line of inquiry? John, you can open your mic. Got your hand up. There was a historical hand. Yeah.
Sorry. Am I on? Well, there's a message of the situation here. Is there well, there is obviously library associations, and indeed whether any of them have an international group within that association that connect with ILIG. Is there a sort of mirror image, if you like, a reflection of what we're trying to do here in India or in any of the states in India?
That's a good question, Arjun. What do you think?
I think we have the Indian Library Association. So, I mean, we have a couple of others, like there is a Association of Library Information Science Teachers and the Association of School Librarians. So I think the by and large, the bigger parent association is the Indian Library Association. So if you want, I will just share the CILIP ILIG information with all of them. I mean, as and when you want me to. So that is one of the areas where people can get to know a lot, because they have their own mailing lists. So I can share it on the mailing list.
Oh, that would be really handy, actually. That's something that'll have to grow organically, I think, as we discover them, essentially. We've got the Alan Hopkinson IFLA Conference Award 2022 out at the moment. So we'd be grateful if you and everybody here could pass on the message about that. I think we've got one more month to go before the closing date of the, on the website, 29th of May. So, you know, we've got a bit of time left to sponsor somebody. But yeah, do pass the message on about that. And I'll, but that's it from me. So shall we draw the meeting to a close? Yes, nods of agreement. No further questions.
Any more questions?
Anybody? No.
So I just have a question. So can I ask a question? Yeah.
Yeah, you can. I'm sorry, we were thinking only of our own needs. Arjun, questions for us?
Okay, yeah. So I have a question for Leslie. So I know that Leslie is interested in Russia, isn't it? So yeah, okay. So so I mean that is the Cambridge University, I mean the Russian department or whatever it is, I mean whatever the Russian history department or the Russian language department, is it still the same you know, place for those Bolshevik young men that it used to be in the 60s and 70s? I mean, is it still for the revolutionary young men, or is it not changed with the?
I don't know much about the Cambridge department. I don't. Oh.
Okay.
I think I've just disappeared.
No, you're all right. Still see you and hear you.
Can you still see and hear me? Because you've disappeared.
Yeah.
I don't know if Aidan can say any more about the Cambridge department, but I think, you know, studying Russia has changed an awful lot in the course of the last century, and certainly the people that I know in London who do are extremely critical of what is going on currently. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Leslie. Thank you.
Okay, that's brilliant. And anything else you want to ask us, Arjun, while we're all here? Or are you done? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. All right then. So we'll close the meeting now. Please do look for our other events online. We have our AGM coming up and a talk from the new CILIP president. So do keep your eyes and ears out for that. And I'd like to extend the thanks of all of us to you, Arjun, for such a sort of academic, thoughtful talk, really. So thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.
And like people are expressing their in the participant list, everyone's clapping. So it was brilliant. Thank you so much, Arjun. Okay.
Thank you, Arjun. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's great. That's
Thank
great.
you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Arjun. Thank you.